Let Amiga present a Play video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi there everybody, welcome to another Amiga play guide, or at least a playthrough, or at least a let's play. This is going to be Wizball. This was released by Ocean Software in 1988. I remember when I first got my Amiga, it came with the 10-star pack, as well as a few more other games, and the 10-star pack included Barbarian, the axe sword wielding one where you chop people's heads off, and I'd already played that on the Commodore 64. It came with Amigas, which was an Arkanoid rip-off. It came with Mercenary 1, which I'd already completed on the Commodore 64, and Thundercats, which also had a better version on the 64, which I did get good at in my time, but the Amiga version stinks, and Pteropods, which I've no idea still how to play that to this day, and a few other games as well. But it also came with this Wizball, which I'd already purchased on the Commodore 64 on budget, because it was, to my mind, one of the top 3, if not the best game on the Commodore 64. And it's debatable whether Hawkeye and The Last Ninja 2 were even better than this. Of course, Wizball on the Amiga stank, Hawkeye on the Amiga stank, Last Ninja 2 on the Amiga stank. So this is what we ended up with. And I went into this with big expectations, thinking that this was a sensible software conversion. Unfortunately not, it was an Ocean game. This was programmed by Peter Johnson, and graphics are by him, and some of the music as well, and the programming. So you can see by this pretty lame introduction sequence, the aim of the game is to fill in the colours of this particular game, and you can see on this screen it gives us a number of options: 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, 4 player. And 2-player team, you get to control the player and the cat, and 2 players and 3 players, I think they take it alternatively. I'm not sure whether these were on the original 64 version, but let's just say that this attract screen is nowhere near as good as the 64, neither was the music. Another thing about the Amiga version is that it was programmed in NTSC compatible mode. That means we get a nice big huge black box around the bottom of the screen where nothing is in it, and the game starts maybe 1/4 of the way up the screen. And you can see that the graphics are colourful enough, and you can see elements in the background as well, but this is what we had to play with. Unfortunately, the C64 version, inferior as it was, still looked an infinitely better than this. And you can also see that right at the start of the game, even though we have to play it in the letterbox, it gives us no help whatsoever. On the Commodore 64 version, it always gave us something at the start that we could collect, and that helped us to power up, and it always gave us some means of powering up at the beginning of the game, and it didn't give us this kind of scenario where we can't actually get to any power-ups. So that's definitely a detriment on the Amiga version, and it's not particularly easy to bounce around the screen when you haven't got any power-ups either. So you can see this is real-time footage. I haven't played this in years, and this is me trying to get through, and as soon as I do get through to the next section, of course we die. So because we haven't got any power-ups, we have to nudge the controller left and right very gently. And of course on the Commodore 64 version it would have given us some power-ups by now to save us going into that dead end. But on the Amiga version it gives us a nice big blank screen with nothing going on and nothing that we can actually shoot at to actually save our life. So it's back to the power-ups. Unfortunately, if we fall down that hole, that's not a good thing. And so it puts the initial power-ups in impossible places, and the 64 version actually put those in at random. But the Amiga gives those at fixed amounts, so you can't just go off the screen and slightly back on it again. And of course collecting that power up means that we've died. So right at the top of the screen you can see number 1, that means us, that's player 1. Next to that is 2, and that is the number of lives that we've got remaining from 4 that it gives us at the start of the game. The 8 you can see, I've no idea what that means, and underneath that we get a basic score that says 150. On the Commodore 64 version, I remember playing this for hours on end, absolutely getting loads of really great power-ups and getting really far with it and making the most of this game. But on the Amiga version, I was disappointed by the horrendous places that it places the items before you can even start the game. So that usually, barring any fortune or good luck, usually means that the game's written off as soon as it started. So it is that kind of a problem on the Amiga, and these kind of problems you wouldn't think would actually be a problem. Look at that, the power up goes off the screen and it disappears. So, and that takes us on to level 2. So you wouldn't think that basic playability problems would have actually been an issue, but they are in this game, and it's so easy to mess it up just by, I mean look at that, on the Commodore 64 version it would have given us 8 or 10 power-ups on the screen all at once. We have to traverse the entire level before we find one, and that one out of the 8 or whatever how many it is usually tends to be in an awkward position. So this is my first experience of Wizball in quite a long time, and this was the experience that I had on my very small 15-inch portable TV when I first got my Amiga, and at least it was in colour. So initially the graphics do look a step up from the Commodore 64 version, however that's the only good thing about the game. So for now let's just adjust screens so that it's automatically scaling on the screen, so that hopefully we can see that in full screen. And that means that at least we get this, the full depth of the screen, even though it means the graphics are out of their aspect ratio that they were originally drawn in. At least we can see the game in full screen. And it appears to have chopped the very top off the screen on this stretched screen ratio that I'm playing it on at the moment, but at least I can see the screen. And it's pretty difficult to waggle that joystick left and right furiously to select those power-ups, and I'm not actually sure. Yes, we can press space, but the space also pauses the game, it looks like, and which is incredible, so you don't really want to do that. And so bumbling along here, we've now got 2 power-ups, so it means we can change our ability to roll. And if I waggle that joystick left and right, it means we can now move around, and you can see sometimes the background itself moves before the actual character has, and that's yet another deficiency in this game. When the cat appears, that will automatically go through any of these items and get killed, so before we spawn the cat we have to make sure that the cat is not going to spawn anywhere near any of these items. Now the cat has appeared. We can now hold down the fire button, and very slowly, in fact, the cat will move its way around the screen, and actually targeting things with the cat is pretty difficult. At this point, we've got a choice. We can either go for the up and down defense force fields, which would be a good idea, or we can go for the laser. So we've chosen to try to get the laser, and if you bounce around on the edge of the screen and come back again, it usually resets the enemies. And these are different enemies than they were on the Commodore 64 version, because obviously the programmer has taken liberties with this code. And even though I've got the laser on the moment, which on the Commodore 64 version is a big fat chunky laser that cuts through everything, of course they couldn't do that on the Amiga version. What we get instead is rapid fire. So that double fire rate is supposed to equal the same as the laser. By exploding these droplets, it's supposed to be possible to explode them into paint and then collect those with the cat. And if we dip under the horizon, it is supposed to be possible to be able to do that. Unfortunately, it looks like that particular wave has disappeared. That particular wave should respawn on the Commodore 64 version so that we can shoot that paint again. And of course, rushing into danger means that we now have to do all of that scenario all over again. And it's pretty difficult to line anything up in the game. Even these initial power-ups are difficult, and they're certainly more difficult than they needed to be. And so you can see the deficiencies of this game are now starting to pile up, and it's pretty difficult for me to control my enthusiasm at this point, given the fact that the game is very difficult and it's determined at this point, because we are bouncing, it's determined to kill us. There's nothing we can do. At this point, he seems to be bouncing around it, because the minimum bounce is unfortunately greater than the distance that we need to travel. There is no way for me to actually get back and collect that item, which is annoying. So, as you can see, I'm not a huge fan of this game, simply because it's so incredibly annoying. Not even slightly, I mean incredibly annoying. And you can't even quit the game. Well, with the escape key you have to press pause and press quit. So sometimes, maybe as if by a miracle, we do get a good start. And if we do get a good start, then not only will we find different enemies than the 64 version, but they also fire differently as well. They've got a different sound effect, and it feels like a completely different game in the extreme. So let's risk the cat, and of course we can't reach those without getting killed, and of course it's very difficult to hit those with the cat. So let's go for the force field this time. Not that that really does much for us, we should have gone for the laser. So now here we go, level 1 all over again. Of course, if you rush into danger, look at that, straight through. I mean, I'm firing at this thing, but I'm going straight through it, and now I've got a mad cat. So now that means that the cat is no longer under our control, and the mad cat will just bounce around infinitely until it collides with something. And if those drops collide with us, of course, that's another life over. Of course, if we move on to level 2, there isn't much we can do here without the cat. So it's a complete dead end. Back on level 1, and that's 4, so it looks like the items in the top corner are simply the number of items left in the wave, which there are 3. So that's 2, that's 1. So according to that, we've still got 1 item to find in this wave, and there it is. Now we can collect that. And I always touch the edge of the screen to get those enemies. And finally, we are actually collecting. You'll notice that some of the enemies go under the ground, and some of them don't. So this one goes under the ground. We can't really collect much of it without killing the cat. Luckily, the cat has got 9 lives. In the bonus stage, things don't improve very much either, because the bonus stage is nothing like the Commodore 64 version. You can see we've got a minimum amount of power-ups here, and all it's doing is basically throwing things towards us that we can't automatically evade, and if one of these things kills us, of course, we're going to die. But this being the bonus section, we're not going to lose a life. What we actually do is hopefully pick up some power-ups, and that helps us later on through the game. Now we reach the Wiz Lab, where we can select any one of the items, and I'm not sure whether we actually managed to get those items or not, or whether we spectacularly failed to do that. I think you have to select a power up before you go into that particular thing, otherwise I don't think it's going to work. Anyway, we're trying to get up to the good firepower, and at the moment we're not managing to achieve much of it. So until I get the good firepower, I don't really want to go down to level 2. And you can look at that. Vacant enemies, and then as soon as you go off the screen, 1 appears. So it's pretty difficult, and unlike the 64 version, you can't really use the cat either to our great defense. And you can't just touch this and go backwards, because sometimes the enemies don't respawn we expect them to do, because they should be right here. There's 12 enemies, and then as soon as you find the enemies, you go straight into them. And as you can see, that power up that we bought has not, unfortunately, been saved. So we went through that bonus section for absolutely nothing whatsoever, because we forgot to press fire to collect our power-ups. And again, in ridiculously difficult places to pick those up, and we've died just as we managed to do it. So we've managed to get 1 colour on this particular level, and to say I'm not really enjoying this experience is an understatement, given the fact that if we try to collect these, we're just going to die. So, for the final time, this was my experience of the Amiga. Pretty pathetic Last Ninja 2. Pretty pathetic Hawkeye. Really pathetic Wizball. Really pathetic Thundercats. Pretty average and non-imaginative Mercenary 1. An Arkanoid rip-off. Barbarian, which was identical to the Commodore 64 version. And basically, these sound effects are terrible as well. So, this game had the potential of being a good game on the Amiga. It was obviously played to death with a brick and a hammer and chisel, and didn't bother to actually analyse the deficiencies in the playability. And that's pretty annoying, to say the least. So everything about this game feels annoying and insulting compared to the original, which was in fact much better. Not just in some respects, but in every respect. Because you just can't do anything with this game that you could do with the original. You can't use any of the same tricks that you could perform with the original, and sometimes the enemies kill you before you've even got a shot off towards those enemies. So yet again, on the 64 I could get maybe, let's say, 12 colours in a particular game. In an average game it would be maybe 4 colours, and in a proper bad game it would be perhaps, well, I could usually get maybe 2 colours in a really bad game. And in this game I haven't even got one. Well, I have got 1 colour, but not on this particular playthrough. And 1 pathetic colour in this game is unfortunately really bad, and that says a lot about the playability, the user friendliness, and the regard for this game. And people on Lemon Amiga were generous. Look at that, completely missed the cat, so that's written off the level completely. Oh, and I've selected that by mistake. Oh, and we've got some more bonuses, that's lucky. But anyway, the people on Lemon Amiga were too generous. They gave this an average score of 6 out of 10. They said that the graphics aren't broken, the sound effects aren't broken, and the game isn't broken. But apart from that, it's completely broken. Like the fact that I cannot collect now. That's the one item that I needed. And I go straight into the enemies without having the time with the cat to pick those up, unless we go straight in there with the cat and take some damage. Well, that's the whiz spray. That doesn't really do much for us. That's another extra life. So that puts us up to 2 lives. That's the police, we don't want that. And it's completely unfair and completely at random what you get with the game. And sometimes it plays fairly. Now the lights have gone out, but at least with this version it does give you the chance to collect a few bonuses, a few power-ups, unlike some of the conversions later on in the game, in the PC realm, which tried to convert this game and to various degrees of accuracy. So I do have some respect for this, but I'd only give this maybe a 3 out of 10. Basically because the game is so annoying every time you try to play it. So because we've got the darkness, it's actually giving us the darkness back when we enter the level again, and that means we can't see a thing, so that means we can't play the level. But we can hopefully collect the cat spray, and let's see the impact of the cat spray on this particular version of the game. Wow, look at that. Look how slow it fires. Up, down, up, down, up, down. That is ridiculous. And the cat spray is supposed to help us. And again, on the 64 version, if you collect a dark symbol, that will eventually wear off so that you can see the level. On the Amiga version, you can't see anything at all, unless you collide with anything. And then it might show you where you are, or it might not. So let's check out level 2 and let's see if we're still in the dark. And yes, we are. Of course, on the 64 version it wouldn't do that because it's not tight, and the 64 would probably time out as well once in a while, so that you're not going to be completely in the dark. That's another life. That's another problem with the Amiga version. It gives you tons of extra lives because the game mechanics are broken. And now that I've got the, well, I'm supposed to have the shield on, but nothing's flashing to tell me that I've actually got the shield, so I have no idea if I have actually got the shield or not. Finally, we've got some light in the game. Unbelievable. So now I've got the colours. That's the purple one. I can't remember what that does, but we're gonna have to get some more reds, unfortunately. That's bad news. That's another life, just as we lose one. So in this game, to add insult to some kind of injury, every time you die, you have to come back, and look at that, I've missed the power-ups again. Got it. So to add insult to injury, we're going to have to go back through the red zone, and I've missed the power-up. We're going to have to go back through the red zone again. To get some more red firepower. Select it, there you go. Because we didn't quite get enough to fill in the colour. Select it. I'm trying. Well, we've got the whiz spray, but that's about it. And I'm having, now that I've got the police raid, so I'm struggling here. Go away, police. Stupid thing. The cat's taking damage after damage after damage. So we still need the reds. For some reason, we've still got 40 enemies on this level somewhere. 40 enemies. Oh god, and now we've got a mad cat, so now I can't control the thing. Oh, now it's working again. And now we've just killed the cat. And we didn't have enough, unfortunately, to fill in the next colour. And it looks like we did, so that's good. And look at that, every single bullet, literally every bullet goes straight through. I mean, you know, it's crazy. The game is absolutely crazy. It feels nothing like the original. This was not even touched by Sensible Software. It wasn't even glanced by Sensible Software. All this was Ocean, unfortunately, because I think Sensible released it through Ocean at the time. So now I've got 40 enemies at some point on this level. And you can guarantee that most of those will be raindrops or whatever drops that they are, now that we haven't got the cat to pick them up. And even navigating through these levels is a pain. So where are they? 40 enemies, Am I going to be able to collect that without blowing up? Let's see. And yes, we can. And well, we've got the whiz spray. I'm gonna have to destroy the cat to get the cat spray, which I've spectacularly missed. And as you can imagine, I'm getting 100% bored with the game because it's not playing fair at all. At all, to any degree. And everything I'm trying to do is actually boring. So it has got some parallax scrolling on the bottom of it. Missed the upgrade again. Never seems to fire in the direction that you want to fire. Collectibles disappear. And game over, thank God. So that's my play of Wizball, a most pathetic conversion on the Amiga. So thank you once again, and we'll see you in another one sometime soon.